Aloha, my name is Kyle Nishiyama. I'm a realtor in Kailua Kona, Hawaii, with a company called Knutson and Associates.
And I'm interviewing him today, and it's Julie.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Sure. For you guys who are on the group, you might not recognize Kyle, because this is Kyle's first shot at doing a live update with us. And one thing I like about Kyle is that he works for one of the biggest property management companies in Kona. And he's got a really cool insight and background that you guys are going to find very cool today, because nobody else is talking about this stuff on Facebook. And we're going to be talking about those of you who have asked questions about getting homes with Ohana units, ADUs, secondary opportunities for income from the home you buy, condos, the whole thing. So we're going to be chatting, and we'll be checking in on questions that you have for Kyle. But let's get started. One of the things I thought was really cool about what Kyle and I were talking about and how this whole thing got started was that a lot of people will say, I want to buy a condo and make some money off of it while I'm waiting to retire to move into it in the future. And so I was like saying, well, of course people are going to say, well, they want to buy an oceanfront condo. And he said, that's not always true. And he has a really good reason about why that's not always the case. So let's start there.
So, I feel like a lot of times people have this, that's the dream, right? Is to have a place in Hawaii, have it produce income, maybe retire out here someday. And I think that there's sometimes a misconception with the amount of, even the amount of potential that is lacking. I feel like we have so many areas in Hawaii that are really special, and they may not be exactly like resort areas, but in Hawaii, up and down Ali'i Drive, almost that whole thing is considered resort, and so they do really well, and there's a lot of rental properties that we manage at our brokerage that do very, very well up and down the coast throughout the year. We do have a seasonal market here in Hawaii, and so it's definitely catered to when people are visiting and coming here. So like obviously Ironman, Christmas, things like that are going to do much better. And I'm sorry, what exactly was the specific question?
The location, because what you told me was people always think that they want to be in the front of to look out over the ocean, but you're saying sometimes that's not the best one.
Yeah, no, that's actually true. So what we see sometimes happen in our inventory is people will have a garden view unit or a back town home that's maybe not direct ocean front. And what happens is, although the average nightly rate maybe not be as high, they're not charging a premium, those are actually more attractive to families who are traveling and maybe groups of adults who are traveling who are looking to on the nightly rate. So that way they can go and they can do a dolphin tour, they can go and do a cruise, or whatever those other adventurous things are that they want to do on their vacation. A lot of times those direct oceanfront condos, because they go for a premium, and yes, they're so special, they're so beautiful, but a lot of times those are honeymooners or people celebrating special occasions who are going to splurge for that experience. You know what I mean? And so when you have a direct oceanfront property and you're charging a premium rate, your occupancy may hover right around 50 to 60% because it's a high nightly rate, right? If you have a garden view unit and your nightly rate's down here, you have the same number of bedrooms and all those things. Yeah, you're not looking at the ocean, but your average occupancy is usually going to be a little bit higher. And so that offsets the daily average nightly rate,
right?
And you're still making pretty good money with a 70-80% occupancy.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the condo that faces the back of the property is going to probably cost less to get into it too, right?
Yeah, no, it will, absolutely, because the oceanfront properties are going to definitely go for a premium,
right? So you're basically saying you think about this as an investment strategy. Get the garden view, pay a lot less to get in as a condo payment, get more people renting it constantly, so you get more money coming in.
Sure.
And therefore, it's like something that most people might not think of themselves. So it's a good strategy, right?
Yeah. It's definitely not guaranteed, but it's a good strategy. It's definitely a good way to stay creative. That way, because again, we do have such a seasonal market, right? So when it's hot here in the summer, it's hot everywhere else in the summer.
Yeah.
So people are going to the lake, people are going to the beach in California, people are doing other things. Kona's not as busy. But in those times where it's kind of that off season, again, these garden views or these townhomes in the back, they usually still maintain a decent occupancy rate because they're not charging an arm and a leg per night.
Right.
And so in the summers, while other units sit empty because they're charging a premium, these guys are still bringing in money because people are traveling with, just families. More of an an everyday budget.
Yeah, so. And also I have friends. I mean, literally, because I run my 365 page. People are constantly emailing me in the back end, and I'm not a travel agent, and they keep saying, where do you suggest I stay and keep within a certain budget? And I try and tell them that sometimes with the condos, you have to stay for at least 3 days. And you got to put in the extra money that it's going to cost for cleaning fees.
Sure.
And to make that their daily concept and figure out if it's less expensive to stay in a hotel or not.
Sure.
Most of those people who want to come with their families and they want to cook and they want to bring them their food and they want to go to Costco and they want to drink their own drinks and the whole schmeal, that's what they want to do.
Yes.
So it would seem that those people are cost conscious and they want to make sure that they get a chance to stay here no matter what it takes. In the price range that they have already picked for themselves.
Yes, yes. And it's important, too, for people when they are looking and they are booking, whether it be with a condo or a hotel, Hawaii has that TAT, that Transient Accommodations Tax, which is an additional on top of the general excise tax for anybody traveling. So if you're looking on VRBO or if you're looking on Airbnb and it says $150 a night, it's not actually $150 a night.
They add like 19% by the time
like,
you get over
it's
it?
Close to 15% with all of the taxes. And so, and taking the taxes into consideration, at the condo too, in Airbnb or VRBO, you're likely going to have a cleaning fee, and then you're going to have whatever other, you know what I mean, additions that you add on. With a resort, you're going to pay for daily parking or daily valet
too,
or other resort fees or however it is. So they get you on both sides.
They get you on both sides,
But yeah, overall, I think having the opportunity to have more of an experience in Hawaii, like you're saying, cook with the family, bring friends, maybe some people are coming and going because you're staying for an extended period of time. It's nice to have a space where you feel like you're at home.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong, sometimes I enjoy the resort life too, but yeah, I do enjoy doing the condos because I think that you get more of a local experience, if that makes sense, while you're on vacation.
And so speaking of that, so there's some people here who might be listening later too, that are definitely thinking, okay, I want to put the money that I have right now into a condo, and then retire back into it later, right? So at this point, that's called second home, right? And you're going to pay different taxes for that.
Yes.
Can you tell them a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there's definitely an investor tax rate. Beyond that, if you're not a U.S. citizen, there's a foreign investor tax rate as well. So if anybody watching is in Canada or
we get some people who are from Canada,
Europe or anything like that, so just keep that in mind. There's great resources online through Hawaii's government website, and the tax rates do change annually. But for example, right now if I'm not mistaken, for a out-of-state investor, it's $11.10 per 1,000 of assessed value. Okay. If you're an owner-occupant and you're a resident of the state of Hawaii, it's $6.10 per 1,000
wow, so
of
almost
assessed
double.
value. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I hate to throw those numbers out there and sound too confident. I would want to double check. But,
no, we did do a little chat about how property taxes are expensive here, and I think it was $11 for people who are out of state.
Exactly. And so, but if you're in state and you live in Hawaii or you have an owner-occupant residency or whatever, then it's much more affordable. So although you're looking at a higher tax rate while you're renting it out for the first few years, when you come and retire in it and you establish residency, you'll get that tax break.
There you go. And also you get another tax break. Can you mix the two if you're 62 and over? And then there's also another one at 70 years of age?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so you can kind of just keep good. The older you get, the more you move to Hawaii, you get to come a little bit lower.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And the one thing, too, that I always recommend to folks who are looking for condos to rent is really taking into consideration the rentability of all aspects of this condo. Obviously, you want to find a property that you love, but if you're looking at this as an investor, sometimes you have to take your personal emotion out of it, right? And you may want to be in, the garden back in Keauhou, but if you really want your property to rent for a premium during Ironman, maybe just strategically bring yourself closer to the pier where Ironman's taking place. Because some of the properties down in Keauhou maybe are just, they're 8, 10, 12 miles from the pier. So it takes a little bit longer for those to rent as quickly for as much of a premium during that time of the year.
Well, and also, do you think it's also because people see themselves walking downtown?
It's exactly what it is.
Is this? Okay, because obviously when you've been drinking.
And don't get me wrong, like Keauhou does great, and we have some wonderful, beautiful condominium resorts in Keauhou. I'm just saying for that Ironman surge, people want to be close down by the pier. Yeah.
And also, because obviously that's just 1 week out of the year, but I think also people, especially now, correct me if I'm wrong, the traffic on the Leahy is getting a little crazy.
It really is.
And so
it really is.
You don't want to have to spend 15 minutes of your hard-earned vacation time just sitting in traffic on a Leahy Drive. So if you are a little bit closer and let's say you are a tourist who kind of comes here quite often, you're going to look at that, right?
Yes.
And say, you know what, I want something within a mile of downtown.
Absolutely. And what's great is if you've been here once or twice, you're already kind of familiar with what's close enough to town that you can walk to. And they also just put those city bikes in.
Yeah, the bikes are
which
great.
Are awesome. Yeah, and we see those
hop
get used
on those
all the time.
Yeah, because Eric works down at Sea Village, and there's a blue bike experience right there, and it is exactly 1 mile from downtown. So you just hop on your blue bike, you park it out in front of Papa Cona's restaurant, and then you're riding back.
It's so easy though, so convenient. Honestly, it really is. It's a nice addition that they made to town for people to get around.
So just something for you guys to consider in terms of location, in terms of renting your condos more. And then let's talk about homes with Ohana units.
Okay.
So how familiar are you with the STVR rules around that?
I'm fairly familiar. It's been a long journey that we've gone through since 2019. So in 2019, not to go too deep into the woods, but they presented a bill in the state of Hawaii for us to restrict vacation rentals a little bit further than what they were already going through. And so if you're not in what's called vacation or resort zoning, you need a non-conforming use certificate to have an STVR permit, which stands for short-term vacation rental permit. And so in order to have that non-conforming use certificate, the homeowner would have had to apply by September of 2019.
So you are... It's not
It's
it.
done
Yeah,
already.
You're done.
So if you move
can't.
here tomorrow, you can't apply for a non-conforming use certificate.
But you can
had to have
buy
been
one
done.
from somebody else who has one.
I'm not sure if you can do that.
Oh.
Can you buy one from somebody else and bring it in?
Well, people are saying make sure you have your certificate. That way, it goes with the property. When
So
you
it
sell
is transferable.
Yeah? Okay.
It is transferable
Okay.
with the property, and that's right. And so you can transfer it, and there's a fee that's associated with that, and there's an annual, you know what I mean, process where you reapply, or not reapply, but just keep it active, right? And you have a person on site that's marked on that permit as your on-island representative or on-island agent, which would be your property manager at that time, who would facilitate with county to make sure that you're a go.
Now, that's if you're not living in the house.
Exactly.
Right. Now, if you have a house and you have space underneath the house or in the back there, as long as you're living on the property, can you rent that in short-term rentals?
So it's a tough question, and it does also come down to zoning too. What I will say is, if you want to do it right and you want to be, 100% confident that you are doing the right thing, you should rent your property for maybe 30 to 60 or 90 days at a time, or even 6-month rentals. And
Just
that's
that
totally
way,
fine.
because it goes with the spirit of the law.
Anything over than 31 nights is considered a long-term rental already. And so, especially when you're sitting in an ag zoned property, or you're, you know what I mean? And a lot of homes here in Hawaii are in Holualoa or are down south, and they're all zoned for ag. And even though there's 2 living spaces, it's the county's not going to let you do hosted Airbnb rentals.
Good to know. This is good to know, so you guys don't think you're going to make $5,000 or $6,000 a month.
I mean, you might be able to start, but as soon as you get flagged, you're going to start facing hefty fines, and there's a lot of repercussions, and so I do not recommend it. But you could always do, depending on location, like I said, 31 night rental minimums. We see a lot of those come through Hawaii, and people do want to stay for extended periods of time. And beyond that, we get a lot of even retirees or folks who are maybe working remotely who do want to come and stay for 60 or 90 days, and so it is possible to still secure those bookings online.
Yeah, and also traveling nurses as well.
Yep,
and then also, I've been trying to get people to give me dates for people who are trying to come here and buy a home, where they want to be here for 3 months.
Yes.
And then they want to buy a house. But
Escrow,
they need
right?
they need that time frame to look for the house, be in escrow. And then you
see
can
that a lot,
you can still get, a pretty good income from doing even like 3-month chunks of rentals.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then also, if you have a long-term renter, let's say underneath your garage, or the long term, that's just another way to have an opportunity to pay your mortgage, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of what we're talking about here too, is that how can we create affordable opportunities for you to afford your mortgage in Hawaii, right? And so when a house is for sale, it'll tell you if it's permitted or not.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
So some people have been asking me, so what happens if you get kind of clever on your own and build a little something on your own? How, I mean, I guess your neighbors could tell you on you, right?
I mean, yeah, it's very likely anybody could potentially report you or flag you. I think that depending on how creative people out there are trying to be, it would depend on how visible it is from the naked eye that's driving by your road. You know what I mean? There's all sorts of ways that people are going to see what you're doing there without pulling permits.
Yeah.
Beyond that too, when it goes for resale, if those photos go up on MLS or anything like that, and there's there's 2 or 3 kitchens throughout your property, and somebody sees that, they're like, that's probably not what it should be.
But you're on the way out anyway. No. Yeah, I know a woman that has 4 different units underneath her house in Palisades. I don't know if that's all, copacetic, but she's making a small fortune doing that.
Yes.
But we're on the up and up here. So when you're buying a property, it will tell you if there's a permitted accessory dwelling unit, Ohana unit. Is there another word that they might be using here in Hawaii for that?
No, ADU, Ohana, those are pretty common terms. You might see farm dwellings out there, which would be on ag properties. And so if it is zoned for ag, the county's not going to allow you to add an Ohana, but you can add what's called a farm dwelling. And those are there to show the production of agricultural crop that's being produced. And it's for like the folks who are working that crop, supposedly. But there's a limit on the square footage. You can still bring plumbing and electrical to these out buildings on your property, but it's very limited, so you can't do like a full kitchen or a full setup like this, and it can't be over a certain number of square footage. But when people do, if you're already purchasing a home and if you're looking online and it says, separate living space or second bonus room, and it has maybe it has a little bar sink and a half-size fridge.
That's a clear indication.
It's probably not a fully zoned permitted kitchen, but it is a bonus area, and a lot of people will rent those in Hawaii because you can add not necessarily a full stove or full oven, but even a hot plate or a microwave or something like this. It's suitable for studios and for people who are single, or even, couples who are younger who can make that work for 6 months or a year. It totally happens, and we see those rent all the time.
Yeah, and speaking of that, do you feel comfortable talking about what those can rent for? Would you say 12, 13, 14?
I think that depending on the location and the finishes, that's a very, very easily attainable number in Hawaii. Right now, a few years ago, a 1-bedroom or even a studio, you would be able to find for a 1-bedroom, I would say a few years ago, you could find for $1,200 or $1,300. Now, it's really hard to come across a 1-bedroom for that price.
Yeah.
And so if you did have a studio in your home, taking into consideration that it's a shared living space, and it's not a full, complete 1-bedroom or XYZ, the parking, etc. Hi, babes. Sometimes they'll, maybe if it is a space in your home, I think $1,200 or $1,300, you could easily probably find somebody who would rent it for that price. Yeah. Again, depending on finishes, location, view, all those things are going to be brought into consideration. If you're going to allow that person access to the pool, or maybe you have a huge garden and you're going to let them, have freedom out there, have pets, it could go up.
Yeah, especially if you have pets. Yeah, because that's like a premium right now, too. Yeah, and a fenced yard. If you have a fenced yard for dogs.
Yes.
Oh, that's gold right now, you guys.
Absolutely.
So, homes with ADUs, built in under the house experiences. Okay, let's talk about that real quick. So, some of the things I do in my life, one of them is I take people on neighborhood tours, and they pay me for my time. Because doing it to a realtor is not cool, so pay me and I'll drive you instead. See, that's how that works. We don't advocate using realtors to just drive you around Hawaii.
It saves us some
time
in the long run.
So I will do that. So I was driving up in Palisades, and you can see that a lot of those houses have that space underneath that you can turn that into, different kinds of living experiences, right?
Sure.
And those houses are huge up there too. So let's say you bought a house up there and you wanted to turn that into a permitted experience. Just because people ask these questions too, how hard is it to actually get the county to permit that kind of thing as a brand new under the house Ohana experience?
Yeah. That's a really tough question. So it's going to, again, come down to zoning. And a lot of the stuff up Palisades, believe it or not, when you're going up Ki'imanani, whether you go left or right, Kona Acres, a lot of these neighborhoods are zoned for ag. And so if it's an ag property, there's going to be some restrictions there. I think if it's a residentially zoned property, though, you'll have a little bit more ease with county to get them to allow for an Ohana or an ADU. Again, this is just my personal opinion and speculation from me. But I do think that it's possible.
Yeah.
It's just a time-consuming process.
Yeah.
And, of course, I recommend doing it fully permitted with professionals. So that way, when the county does come through, they're not going to be... at the end of the day, too, if you want to add equity to your property and add value to your property for resale down the road, you're going to need to do it permitted.
Right, get the permits, right?
Yeah,
and also it adds value to the house, like you said,
And so I would highly recommend using a professional, let them go through the permitting process for you.
Oh, there you go.
And then if you find out that maybe a fully permitted ADU or additional dwelling unit with the kitchen and all that stuff is not allowed, maybe you go for a living space like we're talking about, where you have additional living space downstairs, you enclose this area, and then sure, you might be able to get approved for a bathroom or something small, but maybe not a full, like I said, additional dwelling. But you can still turn that downstairs area into, again, maybe a studio esque feel with a small bar sink and a small fridge, and like just allowing them to have kind of like a hot plate or something small in that
And
area.
just so you guys know, I don't know where you guys are from, but that is actually completely acceptable in Hawaii, right? People know that that's happening, and they know it's not like it's like, oh, I can't rent there. That's what they're offering. That's what they're offering. A lot of these different kinds of things. Yeah. And it puts people in neighborhoods too.
Absolutely.
And not out in farmland in South Kona, so you actually get a chance to like be where you work. So it is an opportunity. And,
I think so. And there's a lot of, honestly, I mean, even I've rented homes that were 5-bed, 5-bath, 5 separate entrances with 1 kitchen in the middle.
Oh yeah?
And did a shared kitchen.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I've seen that out here too. Where there's a lot of opportunities in that way where you're creative, where maybe you don't have the ability to permit 2 different kitchens, but you're willing to, like I said, if it's a shared living experience and you have the space and you're open to sharing that space, then you can definitely do it.
There we go.
Make it possible.
Yeah, in fact, one of my friends owns 3 acres up in Koloko,
Uh-huh.
and she's got 2 or 3 of those little farm dwellings you're talking about. They're like 10 by 10 or whatever the heck.
Yes.
And she's creating an outdoor kitchen outside of her house.
Yes.
And doing all these really pretty little things, so when they come to that area, they can cook, and there's an outdoor shower. And she's making it really cool. That way she can have not only parties, but also these two or three that she has working on the grounds. And she really does have people working on the grounds.
So,
but that way they can have that.
Yeah, and it's a really creative kind of alternative way to go about having these spaces, right? Whether you do outdoor living spaces, or I've even seen some people in Palisades or in this area in Kona, they'll bring in, because you can buy right now those tiny homes for like, I think you can get the preset packages for maybe 100,000 or maybe a little bit more. But anyways, it's fully done, completely complete, has kitchen, everything, and they just park it in their yard or in their back area because they've got a couple acres and they have the space.
Right. And
it's like basically a brand new Ohana, but it's on wheels. And so it doesn't have to be, you know what I mean, attached into the ground and fixed.
Okay, so speaking of clever ideas, I've seen this, even though you don't see it around very much. And I'm not, suggesting that we all get kind of crazy here, but is there something that would actually stop you from shipping over an RV and then sticking it in the back of your house? Because I've seen 1 or 2 RVs. Obviously, that's not something that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Do people get in trouble for that, or is that something you can actually do? I mean...
Yeah, that's another really good question. I honestly haven't experienced anybody looking to bring one out. Yeah. And so I haven't come into this at all.
Well, I've got a lot of people who keep asking me, I just want an acre of land that I can have a small, tiny house, and I can live kind of off-gridish, and I want to plant my garden around me.
For some reason, I have this like intuitive feeling that you're not allowed to bring them out here.
Yeah, me too, right?
But if you build them,
isn't it classic? If you're not seeing a bunch of people do it, there's probably a reason why.
Yeah, exactly. But I know people here who've built out vans, who've built out, other things, and live nomadically in that sense, where they've got a van and they do it that way. But yeah, there's companies here who build the tiny home.
Yeah, there's one called Mockingbird
Tiny Homes, and then there's another one, Paradise Tiny Homes, I want to say.
Yeah.
There's a few companies out here who are
and they'll build it on a trailer, and then you'll just pull it up to the land that you just bought.
Yep.
And then boom, you're ready to go.
And even if you were to do customized features for it, you can add like decking or exterior living spaces or like awnings that come off the side. They'll come and deliver it and then add those features after it's been delivered.
Okay, but let's talk reality.
Yeah.
That's not happening in Kona.
I've seen it a couple times. It's not happening a lot.
Because an acre of land costs $300,000.
Sure.
And you've got zoning problems.
Yeah, not in Kona. That's
that's what I'm saying.
I can see down south. That's
down south, or maybe further up the coast, maybe Hamakua.
Absolutely, Hamakua side. Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
Hobby. I would see, more commonly, probably like even Ka'u or Puna districts.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's interesting, too, because with the Puna district, if you happen to buy a piece of land that is lava zone 1 or 2, if something happens, you just get the thing and you roll right off the land,
you
right?
You can go. Yeah, you can take it and go. It's fascinating, though. I mean, I've been seeing homes in that area really take off. And the Ka'u district has been... I mean, if you look at the first quarter of 2021 and the numbers across the state of just our market's development and growth, as far as percentage from last year, they're kicking everybody's butt down there.
Like 200% or something.
Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. As far as number of sales and price per home, they are just growing exponentially. That was really an up and coming area, and if anybody purchased property in that area in the last few years or in the history in the past, now's a great time to sell it. Because there's a lot of growth in that area, and it's really, I mean, the one thing thing that I will say is I think that it's because it's so affordable to live down there.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you can't get into a residential home on a half an acre for under $400,000 or $500,000 in Kona, that's for sure.
Right.
But in these areas you can, and
Yeah.
so it's very attractive to a lot of people.
Yeah, and again, like even just today, a
But then
lot
you're
of people
on the side of a volcano.
That's exactly, but
and
they
there's
don't care
10,000 earthquakes a
because
day.
they just want to
And-
live in live in Hawaii.
Live in Hawaii,
And I
yeah.
keep telling them, I go, you know what? Coming out here and buying a piece of land in Fern Acres, Curtistown, Mountain View, that has its own issues.
Mm-hmm.
They see it on a map, or they see a piece of it on alohaliving.com. I could do that, and so I had to go. You know what? That is a very high elevation, wet and rainy and cold piece of area of this island. That's why you don't see that many people living here.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
Just throwing this out at you, do you have any resources that people could check into to see what's it like to really live there? Look at it. Is anybody doing anything to show people who actually like what that place looks like? Or they probably don't like people knowing more about that place because that's a local space, right?
You know, nothing comes to mind just off the top of my head. I mean, as far as like resources for what's going on in that area, I honestly would look into the volcanic activity in the area, the earthquakes that are happening in the area,
Yeah.
the lava zones, and you know what I mean? And they're monitoring the lava daily. And in my mind, if you're willing to go through and look and see the number of earthquakes that happen on a regular basis on that side and the air quality and all of these different graphs and charts and stuff like that, and still comfortably make your own decision and decide this is where I want to live, more power to you.
There you go. So,
You know.
so that's another thing. Yeah, that's why we're talking to a realtor who actually, like, does business here. That when you see something on Redfin, people keep telling me this. I get Redfin alerts, and I'm watching Zillow. You don't get that. The fact that there is probably going to be another eruption. There's already one happening right now. The air quality around that area is,
Yeah.
it's iffy.
Yeah.
But somebody posted she said, what do you think about this house? And the first thing I see is Leilani Estates. And I'm like, you probably don't know, but
Yeah.
that was the site of
Just
the
a
eruption
couple
in
years
2018.
ago. Yeah, just a couple years
Yeah.
ago, that place was in trouble. And we've seen a lot of homes selling in that area,
Yeah.
and
So
even
they're buying it again.
people will buy. I mean, I saw a few homes close in that area with USDA and VA loans.
Oh, wow.
So they're even lending in Lava Zones 1
What
and 2.
the
Yeah,
heck?
they're lending out there. I mean, it's crazy. Maybe not in Lava Zone 1, but in 2 and 3, you can do it.
But would you say that Leilani Estates is Lava Zone 1 at this point?
I think that it is.
Okay.
I don't know. I know it takes them some time. I'm not dogging anybody. Maybe they have updated it by now, but if the county hasn't updated it yet, it should be a Zone 1.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
whoever.
I mean, there's still steaming fissures in that neighborhood.
There's definitely magma below the surface. Yeah. There's definitely a bunch of stuff down there.
So I'm going to say one more time and back me up on this one. You get what you pay for
Yes.
when you buy property in
Yes,
Hawaii.
absolutely. And it's hard too because I've had people reach out to me. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I've closed a lot of homes on that side. I'm in escrow on that side right now.
Yeah.
There's still people who choose to live there, and I'm not necessarily against that decision. I just think that, especially if you're looking for an investment property, I think that when people reach out to me and they're saying, I want to invest in these areas, and this is my budget, this is my cap, rather than searching for a non-conforming use certificate residential home in rural Hawaii, I would use that money and go towards a condo and go towards something that's tangible in your budget on a Leahy Drive or in the
And
Waikoloa area.
and it doesn't get mowed down by lava. It has people always want to come here.
It's going to
right?
rent
It's
much
better.
Yeah.
And you can buy almost what you would buy, like, because people are looking at 3 and 4 acres down in that area. You can buy a condo almost here for that. And even though you have HOA fees, because people go, oh, HOA fees, it pays for all the stuff that you don't have to deal with when you're not here, right?
Exactly. You don't have to worry about that. Is my property okay? Is there a leak happening inside my spot?
Yeah,
or what's
if
going
I'm
on
not
over
there, something can
Yeah.
the crime, the property, the whole thing.
Absolutely. And honestly, too, in my mind, like when we talk about expenses for a property, homeownership has so many layers of expenses, but the HOAs really do include quite a bit. And so when you're in the condo, it's almost easier to project what else is going to come up, your fixed expenses and your fixed costs, because the HOA encumbers so much.
And also because that's their job is to make sure that they see this stuff coming, and they have to let you know, is there going to be an assessment, right?
Exactly.
Where you're not going to get that someplace else, right?
Exactly. At home, your water heater breaks. The next week, your main line needs to be snaked. The next week, you know what I mean? And then it's just task after task after task.
Your
And
roof
in
needs to be
HOA
replaced.
Exactly. Yeah, the garage door doesn't open anymore. There's all sorts of things that come up, and it all happens sequentially, when it rains, it pours, right?
Yep.
But with a condo, you have that kind of ease. There's a group of people who are in this community who are keeping an eye out for each other. I don't know. I feel like for the rental potential too, you're going to have much more longevity and diversity as far as people who are coming in and for the number of years that they want to spend in that area.
Right.
The volcano, it will have different perks and peaks. Don't get me wrong. Like when it's erupting and stuff like that, it's exciting and people want to go down there. But it's definitely not a all year jive where people want to spend in that area. And
Right.
stuff,
And so that's another thing too, that if you think about trying to buy an investment property in that side, a lot of people once they get here realize, oh my gosh, you want me to rent a house in Ocean View Estates? I had no idea it was that far away. So you have that part of that, like, oh, well, that was kind of like slightly not what they thought it was going to get.
Yeah.
Where you know what you're going to get.
Yes.
If you're in downtown Kona or in this space, you get this, and you know what you're going to have to pay for your property taxes. You have everything set up and ready to go, right? Yeah.
I mean, even our company, like Knutson and Associates, don't get me wrong, there are property management companies all over the island who will manage properties on any corner of this island. But our company specifically, we've been doing long-term and short-term vacation rental management since 1976, and there's only so far south we will go. There's only so far north we will go, because it's at a certain point, it's that we almost don't have, the time and the resources to drive for 2 hours back and forth to inspect a property. It's almost like it's so far, and the tourists don't even like to go down there. As soon as they land off the plane and they're down in South Kona, right, like Kona Paradise, Mililii Beach, Ocean View Estates, like you're talking about, they get to their property and they're like, I don't even want to stay here because I'm
so far away from everything.
Yeah. So we see that oftentimes it's more work than it is worth reward in some instances. And so for these rental properties for the short-term vacation, especially if you're looking into STVR, I highly recommend the Kona Coast and the Waikoloa area.
Yeah,
for
Waikoloa.
sure.
Yeah,
It's gonna be the
Waikoloa
best.
Resort too. That's
Yeah.
we didn't hit that.
Waikoloa area.
That's 25 minutes north.
Yeah.
So
20 to 30
Knutson
minutes.
takes care of all the condos up along the coast, past Keauhou, all the way up to the Waikoloa Resort area. So, and just so you guys know, a little connection here. If you are going to buy a condo, at least you've got a connection with somebody who helps with a property management company that can actually take that for you.
Yes.
And that way, at least it's handled. And these guys have, like you said, 1976. I mean, Knutson has a very high regard in this community. So
yeah, it's a family-owned and operated local company. I primarily do sales, but we do have a full-service team. We've got a group of licensed professionals who can help with the accounting and the reservations and the maintenance and making sure that the cleaners come in and out and bookings and all of that stuff. I mean,
all the
for
stuff
your
you don't want to deal with.
Yeah. When your guests are here and we have our 24-hour emergency hotline, it really helps that you're not at home sleeping, getting calls about a leaking faucet or whatever. So we're here to help and to be a resource. And I'm happy to help anybody who wants to talk story.
And in fact, Kyle is a new member of our group now, so you can actually reach out to him and ask questions. But let's check and see if anyone has any questions. Or
let me see here.
My wonderful husband is not running the camera today for me.
Looks like we have 7 comments.
Okay.
I'm just trying to.
Let's see.
Let me try to.
The drum roll of getting your answers to your questions is happening as we speak.
Yeah, I got you right here. Let's see here. I'm having a hard time getting these comments to pull up.
No.
Another important thing that I did want to talk about while I was here, though, was capitalization rate with everybody.
Oh, cap rates, yeah.
I think that if you guys are looking to invest in property and you want to know how this property is going to do, how long it's going to take to come back, definitely looking into your capitalization rates is going to be super important. The way that you get to your capitalization rate is you're going to take your net annual income and divide that into the amount that is spent on the property. So, for example, if the property costs $1 million and you net $70,000 a year off that property, your capitalization rate is 7%, which is a pretty good cap rate. I think that oftentimes we look at investments and we look at properties and there's a lot of emotion that comes to play, and sometimes it's really important to just take a step back, look at the numbers, think about, is this a worthy investment, and how far can I take this before moving here. And also with that said too, if you have expectation that your property is going to make tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of money, it probably won't. Here in Hawaii, we because we do have, if you're going to be taking out a mortgage and you're going to have a principal payment, interest, taxes, insurance, HOA fees, management fees, all of these other things, you're likely going to hopefully break even, maybe do a little bit better on passive income. But with the seasonal rates and seasonal tourism, summertime might be a little bit harder of a time of year. Wintertime, Ironman, these times during the year when you're making bunches of money, that's great. But it'll most likely even out throughout the seasons. So don't expect to make tons and tons of money every single month.
But think about the equity these people have just gotten
Exactly.
in the last 18 months.
That's the thing, is if you buy a property and you have a little bit of income, or you're breaking even, and you hold on to it for 5 or 7 years, and you think of the annual appreciation of that property over 5 or 7 years, yeah, you might have broke even, but you didn't pay for those mortgages, you didn't pay for those HOA fees, you got to stay on the property for 2 weeks every year, and then in 5 or 6 years when you go to sell, you made another 100 or 200,000 bucks. That's a great investment.
Right. Okay, here's a question. Ready?
Yes.
This one comes in from Tatiana. What is the typical closing cost for the house around $200,000? And is there any program that covers it?
That is a great question. There are programs that will cover closing costs, and that program the first one that comes to mind is the USDA loan. If you talk to your mortgage lender and you can qualify for that loan product type, I highly recommend it. It's 103% financing, aka no down payment, no closing costs. So I do recommend that.
So let's say you don't have that program.
Another
What's
creative
average?
way? Yeah. So what I was going to say too, one way to be creative is if you're going to offer the seller a full price offer, put in special terms that you want them to pay for your closing costs. Just ask for that. It's an ask, it's a negotiation, but you're not lowballing them. You're not coming in super low. You're giving them a full price offer. You're taking out a mortgage for 100% of the purchase price, and then ask seller to pay for closing costs on the back end. It's probably only going to be 1 to 2% of your total purchase price. So if you're financing $200,000, it's maybe $1,000 or $2,000 for closing costs. But with that said, the seller, if they're making that full purchase price of their offer, rather than coming in $2,000 under ask or $5,000 under ask, give them a full price offer and ask them to cover your clever strategy. Yeah.
Josh Clark. We've been working with Kyle for the last month. He's awesome. I highly recommend him.
Thanks, Josh.
Beth, for long-term rental, is there rent control?
In Hawaii, we actually do not have rent control. This is not a rent control state. There's been talk of it. There's been bills proposed, but it has not gone anywhere. And to be honest, from our standpoint, we're here to protect our clients' investments. It's a good thing that there's not rent control in the state of Hawaii.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I'm a Democrat. And Tatiana asks again, what is the minimum down payment for investment property?
That's another really, really good question. So if you're looking for a condo on Ali'i Drive and that condo development is happened to be classified as a condotel, it's going to require not only between probably 30 and 35% down, but you're going to need what's called a portfolio loan. Because right now, there has been some lending restrictions, and I'm not a mortgage lender. You should definitely talk to your mortgage lender and talk to a professional about these changes in the industry recently. But I can say that if the number of people who live at this condo or own properties at this condo development, if it's more than 50% of these people are investors or secondary homeowners or investment property owners, then you're definitely going to need a portfolio loan, which would require probably 30 to 35% down.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other condos in Hawaii, though, where you can get in and it's not this way, where it's approved for FHA or it's approved for USDA, or even if it's not approved for FHA or USDA, you can still come in with conventional financing. And with conventional financing, you can most likely do 3 to 5% down, depending, again, on how you qualify and what you get approved for. Definitely recommend talking to a local lender. If you need local lender recommendations, Julie or I would be happy to send those to you. Talking to somebody who's a great resource is going to be really important, because there's a lot of condos up and down the coast that do not allow for that type of financing, but there are some that do as well. So it's just a matter of working with a local who knows the different areas and a professional who's willing to take the time to explain those differentiations to you.
Right. And so there's another one too, because people say, oh, I looked on Zillow and there's a condo downtown called Kona Makai that's $175,000 for a condo. So just because, again, people are going to watch this after the show. We're getting about 25 people right now, which is great. People are saying, if I can get a condo for that, I'm in like Flint. I'm like, oh, well, it's there's a little something called Leasehold. And they go, what's that? Can you explain a little bit about that, especially that condo complex, about what's happening?
Yes, I'll talk a little bit about the Leasehold. So I think that Leasehold can oftentimes be perceived as something scary, and it is a different form of real estate ownership in Hawaii and in America and across the world or whatever. It's not fee simple, so you don't own it in fee outright. There's a lessor who owns the property in which the condo sits on top of. And so if you picture somebody owning the land, and then everybody who owns a condo at the development owns within their four walls. And then you have your shared common elements, which would be like the parking area, the pool, the walkways, the elevators. Excuse me. With a leasehold property, not only do you have your HOA rent, but you also have what's called a leasehold rent. And so that money is paid to the landowner on a monthly basis for you to have your property sitting on top. I do think that the Kona Makai is actually a great development. We manage quite a few units within that development for vacation rental. They do quite well. It's a nice gated community. It has a couple tennis courts. It has covered parking. They've got 5 or 6 buildings over there with a nice green belt in the middle. And so it's got lovely garden and ocean views and stuff like that. It's a nice spot. And if we're talking about capitalization rate, if you were a investor only who is just looking to purchase it as a rental, say hypothetically, the property cost $150,000. If you came in with all cash and you paid for that condo $150,000 and added it into a vacation rental pool, if you netted $15,000 a year off that condo, your capitalization rate would already be 10%, which is a great investment. And so imagine making $15,000 a year over 10 years. The lease doesn't expire till 2039. And so in 10 years, hopefully that lease gets extended. But anyways, to my point, after you've made up your $150,000 in 10 years, everything that you make beyond that is just solid income. And so if you owned it for, say, 19 or 24 or 39, hopefully the lease gets extended again, you could definitely make money off the property.
Yeah.
And absolutely. And they do well in the vacation rental inventory. And so just to speak to the extension of the lease as well, just so everybody knows, whenever there's a leasehold property, the leasehold does have an expiration date. And so with the Kona Makai specifically, it is 2039. And there's also within the lease terms a renegotiation period, which usually takes place about 5 years to 10 years prior to the lease expiration. And that's when the board of directors at the condo development will sit down with the lessor or his attorneys or whomever and try to negotiate an extension on the lease. And at that time, when the lessor decides whether or not he's going to extend, he has the right to take back the property. He does.
Okay, so they could actually say you're done and tear the whole thing down.
They have the right to do that.
Yeah.
Will they do that? We don't know for sure. Right. There's a lot of owner occupants at Kona Makai, and there's a lot of owner occupants in these leasehold properties in general. And when we look back in history, when this has happened in other states like New York or wherever, it's usually a nightmare. It's a publicity nightmare. All these homeowners get booted. You know what I mean? And these people need a place to live. And so it's not good on the guy who owns the land. It's not good for the homeowners. It's in everybody's best interest to extend. This is, again, just my personal opinion. But anyways, after that renegotiation period, we hope that the board of directors and the lessor can work together to come up with an extension term. And say he gives us an additional 10 or 15 years. Awesome. But at that time, that's when your leasehold rent is also up for negotiation as well.
Right. So you don't know what is going to be.
When he says, I'll give you guys 10 more years, but it's going to be an additional 5% per month for leasehold rent. Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so just anticipating those increases, knowing what the situation is, really having a real estate attorney look at that lease before you purchase. One thing to also take full advantage of and look at is the surrender clause, because that's going to have the most information about when the property owner does take back this property, what is that going to look like and what is the process going to be. Definitely recommend having a real estate attorney review those types of documents with you, but they're still a great purchase and they're still a great option.
Now, 2039. That means you can't get a 30-year mortgage.
Nope. Definitely not.
Okay, so you're basically paying cash.
So right now, because it's 2021, you can't even actually get a 15-year financing term.
Okay. And
again, I'm not a lender. I'd recommend talking to a professional mortgage lender, but the way that I understand it is they want a 5-year buffer.
Yeah.
And so right now, because there's only 19 years left, you can't get 15-year financing. You can only get 10-year financing at this time. Yeah. If they do an extension of that, then potentially we could get 15, 20, or maybe 30-year financing. If the lease were to be extended to 2060 tomorrow, then we could totally do 30-year financing.
Yeah, okay. So that's another reason why it's not that expensive right now on the open market.
That's another reason why, exactly.
Because you have to come up with cash.
And the other thing, too, that I will say is if you're purchasing one of these leasehold properties and you're hoping to own it for a couple years and turn around and make a bunch of money off it and have a whole ton of equity. It's probably not going to happen, especially because that lease hasn't been renegotiated yet, and so the less time that's left on that lease, you know what I mean? It's going to be harder to resell. But again, with that said, there's a lot of owner occupants down there. There's a lot of people who live down there. It's a great development, and I don't foresee anybody wanting to displace that many people in Hawaii in 2020's world, in today's world. It just sounds like it would be a really hard thing to do, and it would affect a lot of people, and it would look really bad on a lot of people.
So who owns that land? That's not Kamehameha, is it?
It's not Kamehameha. I'm not 100% certain, so I'm not going to say.
Okay, but it's not Kamehameha.
It's not. No.
Okay, so it's a private guy.
I believe so, but I'm not 100% certain.
Okay, because Keaho Resort, where I used to live, used to be owned by Kamehameha Estates, and everyone got together and basically said, "We want this land," and they sold it to them, and then that way they could own the land.
Well, and there's a bunch of leasehold. I mean, if you guys are looking at the residential market, you're probably seeing homes come up as well that are leasehold, and there's some properties out there right now that are active on the market, or even properties that I've seen sell recently that are beautiful farmlands, beautiful acreage, wonderful estates, and a lot of those have, leasehold expiration dates that are coming up as well. But if we look at the history of the state of Hawaii and when it was established as a state, and a lot of these old, people and groups of people who are leasing these properties out, a lot of them started with 100-year leases. Yeah. And so it's just a matter of time that it's been coming down, or maybe they had 50-year leases or whatever it was. But yeah, hopefully you have a good renegotiation period, and the surrender clause in there isn't too crazy. Yeah.
Okay, so this would be a good investment for some people. For some people, this might work. So that's what we're talking about, is that, like Kyle said, that maybe if you're thinking about trying to flip this thing and make $200,000 in 10 years, it's not your idea of a good time. But if you hold on to it long enough.
Yeah, and that's why I say if you have 150 or 200,000 cash right now and you just want to get into Hawaii and have a place and rent it out and start, it could be a great option for you. But because financing isn't available beyond the 10-year financing term limits right now, and
it's not
because
good for people who don't have the money.
If you don't have the money up front, it might not be the perfect investment for you right now. But that could potentially change if we can get the board of directors to renegotiate an extension, whether that be for this lease or any other leasehold condo. It's all about the extension of the lease period and how long until it's up.
There you go. Okay, and then in general, and then we're going to start to wrap it, and I'll look for questions one more time. People ask again, because again, this is what happens. People see this stuff on Zillow and Redfin. Oh, how is it that this 5-bedroom house on this beautiful piece of property is so low? But probably because it's leasehold. And so when does it ever work out as an investment to buy a home on farmland that's owned by Kamehameha? When you're in a gentleman farmer experience, when you're creating enough property from the land, like when you're growing something and it has enough value that you're sharecropping. You're basically going in partnership with them, right?
This is where I see it being the most valuable, is if you're buying, like say for example, you want to make an investment or have a property that's an income producing property, and you go and buy a 5 or 10 acre piece of coffee farm that has thousands of coffee trees on it, you're probably not going to be able to get approved on this leasehold ag zoned property to build bed and breakfast. You know what I mean? But if you can hire the crew to work the coffee fields and to farm the land and produce, I mean, Kona coffee sells for $40, $50 a pound out here. Like, let's be realistic. So if you're producing enough coffee, that's really where those are investment properties, and you can start your own business. You can have a state-grown coffee. You can create your own label and sell those products, or even partner with other bigger coffee brand names in Kona who just want to buy your cherries and just want to roast your coffee. And that is a big thing out here, and we do see that happen a lot.
Yeah. So again, if you're looking about being a farmer or hiring a farmer so you can actually have the land, that happens too. You can get consulting, right?
Absolutely.
And then you can be a gentleman farmer. Well, someone will come in and pick all the coffee on your land,
and
they'll sell it, and you'll get a chunk of it, but they'll go and sell it on the open market.
Yes, that happens all the time. And sure, it's a fraction of what you would make, but still, to have somebody else come in and take care of all your coffee trees, and you can just sit back and enjoy your view. Yeah. And you still make a couple bucks per pound. Sweet. And you're drinking your own coffee. Christmas gifts.
Sounds awesome. Awesome. So in that's like, because people are saying, what's LS in I get this. Leasehold is LS, right? And fee simple is FS in the thing. But get this. That only shows up in alohaliving.com. That doesn't show up in Zillow.
They can't see whether it's
leasehold or fee simple. So another thing, you guys, and again, I'm not a realtor. He is. I always tell people, look at alohaliving.com. That's our public-facing multiple listing service for here in Hawaii. Realtor.com, Zillow, Redfin, they're not updating their information as quickly as possible as what we're happening here in MLS, right? So you're going to see those little monikers of LS and FS also on Aloha Living.
Yeah, the LH for leasehold.
Leasehold,
and
LH.
FS for fee simple. Yeah,
right.
totally.
Because that way you can say, is this property or is this that property, right?
And, you know, it's honestly, I feel like if you're looking online and you see a great looking property that looks like it's too good to be true,
it's
probably
is.
fee simple.
Okay, let
Or
me
excuse
see
me, it's
if
probably
there are
leasehold.
questions.
Yeah, it's
Leasehold,
probably
yes.
not fee simple.
Okay, let me see. Do you guys have any more questions? We're going to see more questions. Okay, let's see.
Thanks for having me, Julie. I appreciate that.
Sure, this is fun. Lori says, what's a typical cap rate for properties in Kona? Did you know that?
You know, a typical cap rate, that's a really very good question. I would say it's hard to give out a typical, like, generic, it's casting a pretty wide net. What I think is a good cap rate is anything better than what the bank's interest is on your savings account right now.
No.
And so if you're able to get a cap rate that's maybe 4, 5, 6, 7, 7% is a great cap rate. Honestly, I really do think so. And if you're capping 10, that's awesome.
Right,
if you're able to make your money back in 10 years, that's great.
So I think because with the way the money's being traded, I think 3% is kind of the average going rate. So if you make more than that.
Because if you imagine your money sitting in a bank account for the next X number of years, how long will it take to make your money back? You know what I mean, or whatever. If you go and invest it in another thing, to be able to break even in 10 years is sensational.
Okay, so here's Tatiana again. Living now on Oahu, but looking forward to buying a house on the Hilo side. What's the best way to apply for a mortgage? As an investment property here in Oahu, or move there and apply after having a new job in Hilo in the same field, apply for mortgage as a primary residence. That one, that might be a little bit extensive for you. Do you want me to?
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
It's a really, really, really good question. I would maybe take that to Julie and let her forward that to one of her lenders. I think that there's definitely better times to apply than others, and I will say that. And if you quit your job and you don't have any source of income, you're not going to be able to get approved. Yeah, so definitely consult with your mortgage lender.
Yep. And you have to plan ahead of time, way in advance.
Yes.
I've learned that. Also, even how you apply for taxes this year will affect getting a mortgage for next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Hawaii Life does show leasehold versus fee simple on their website. Thank you, Brad. The ever-present Brad. You haven't met Brad yet, but
hi, Brad.
He comes to
our website shows it too. KonaHawaiiSales.com.
KonaHawaiiSales.com. Okay. So that looks like it's the end of the questions. We've managed to keep 20 people quite entertained consistently, and I will put this on YouTube for you too.
Awesome.
And so more people can get a chance to see this great wealth of information that Kyle has brought. You guys, do I not rock for bringing him in?
Honestly, I mean, I could talk about this for days on end, and there's so much information to be discovered about investment property, and I'm sure that there's a lot of questions left unanswered out there. But ultimately, I just want to be a resource for my clients, and I want to be able to help anybody who has any questions, and it really is our specialty. And so if I work with you and you decide to manage with Knutson's, great. There are some other property management companies on island in town, but as I mentioned, we are the longest standing property management company in Kona.
Right.
And we've been doing these since before VRBO and Airbnb even existed. People called Knutson's for rentals.
Yes.
So.
And also, if you'd like to work with Kyle, one of the things I love about what he does for background is that he has an extensive background in hospitality. That's the reason why he's so damn nice.
It's true. But you know what? I really like to wear that hat full time, the hospitality hat. I mean, my realtor hat may come and go with different friendships and different clients, but the hospitality hat usually stays because I just like to embrace the community and always put my best foot forward. So
he's a aloha man. Hey, so for some people, if they want to follow you on Instagram, what's your handle?
At Real Hawaii Estates, and please do.
Okay, and then also, are you doing anything else out in social in terms? Oh, you have your business page.
Yeah, so my business Facebook page I think is attached to this group. So if you guys reach out to me through the group, awesome. Instagram at Real Hawaii Estates. If you're on Twitter at Real High Estates HI. But other than that, feel free to contact Julie if you guys have any other questions for me, or if you want to get in touch with me. She and I are on a regular basis of communication every week, and so don't hesitate to send her any questions you might have for me as well.
And again, you guys, if you have further questions in the comments, Kyle's part of our group. So if you have something that I can't answer or whatever, I'll say, hey, check out this comment, and then he can answer questions post this program.
Totally.
Cool? Okay.
Absolutely.
So we're going to wrap it up. And you guys, thanks for joining us. And we hope to have Kyle back again. If you guys think of topics you want us to cover that Kyle might be able to think about coming back to the show and answering for you, let us know. But for now, we will, guys, say aloha and join us the first Thursday of the month for when Lance Owens does the real estate market report in May.
Awesome.
Okay, you guys.
Aloha.
Aloha. Okay, keep looking cute. Isn't he cute, guys?
Thanks again, Julie.
Sure.